Hello, all my miraculous friends. Thank you so much for joining me today on this Facebook Live. I'm on vacation and I have something wonderful to share with you. It's a miracle that happened in my own life. And first, I want to tell you a little story from my childhood. So when I was growing up, we didn't have a lot of money. We lived in a lower middle class suburban neighborhood. My mom was always fretting about how she was going to pay the bills, and it just felt like it was a struggle all the time financially for us. I heard my mom say a lot that we couldn't afford things, that there wasn't enough money to buy things that I might want. In fact, I learned as a child never to even ask for things because I didn't want to put any undue pressure on my parents when I could see that finances were already tight. So I grew up always thinking there wasn't enough. And it created this form of poverty consciousness for me that I never even questioned, because pretty much everybody else that I knew lived in the same economic situation in the same neighborhood, right? And it's not like I was hanging out with millionaires and billionaires. I couldn't even conceive of what that life might be like. And if you're as old as I am, you might remember that back in the 60s when I was a kid, there were only 3 channels on television, only 3. So it wasn't like we had all these stations that you could tune into that had programs showing off how the other half lived. We didn't have lifestyles of the rich and famous back in those days. We didn't have Millionaire Makeover or whatever it's called. You know, I didn't even realize, like, I couldn't even visualize how affluent people lived. I just knew what I knew. And I carried this poverty consciousness with me from childhood into adulthood, along with a lot of other ideas like you have to work hard to make money, and money doesn't grow on trees, and the love of money is the root of all evil. In other words, greed. It's not good to want more than what you have. You should just be satisfied with what you have, and on and on and on. But I observed my grandparents. My grandparents had more than we had, and one of the reasons was because my grandfather worked in real estate. So my grandfather was in the Navy for 20 years. He served in World War II on submarines. He worked his way up from really abject poverty. He grew up in North Carolina, back in Asheville when Asheville was nothing. Asheville is now this like arts and crafts mecca for people, but when my grandfather was growing up, it was just dirt, poverty, Buncombe County, you know, hillbilly country. And he got into the Navy right out of high school, and because of that, he had opportunities that other people in his neighborhood never had. So, and because of the war and because of his service, he worked his way up from being in a private first class to a lieutenant commander. Eventually he became an officer. So I saw my grandparents, I observed them when I was growing up because they lived only about a mile away from us, that they could shop at the commissary, that they could go to the PX, that they could do things that we weren't able to do, and they were able to afford a slightly higher lifestyle. And then after my grandfather retired from the Navy, he was still a really young man. He was in his 40s. He had a second career in real estate, and he sold houses, but he also invested in rental properties for himself. So when a house came on the market that was a really good deal, he and my grandmother scraped together the money for a down payment, and they would buy that property and then they would rent it out. My grandparents worked very hard all their lives. They managed all their properties themselves. They would go over and clean and do maintenance and fix things up and collect the rent. And, you know, it wasn't easy money, but they were able to move from this very poor childhood that they had grown up with to a pretty comfortable lifestyle when they were older. So now, getting to the point of my story and why I'm broadcasting from here. When I was a kid, my grandparents bought an Airstream mobile home. Airstream trailer, one of those silver trailers that you pull behind your car. And they joined the Wally Byam Caravan Club, and they traveled all over the United States. They went to every one of the 50 states, and they even had a map in their living room with little push pins to show all the places that they had been. And sometimes they would take one of the grandchildren along with them. So these were the most exciting adventures that I had growing up, was getting to travel with my grandparents and sleep in their trailer. And one of the places that they went to frequently was Campground here in North Carolina. But I didn't know where I was when I was a kid. I got in the car with my grandparents and we drove a while, and then we ended up at a campground somewhere. And all I knew and all that I remembered as a child was that we could swim, we could fish, we could crab. There were other kids to play with. There was a swimming pool, you know, luxuries that I didn't have access to growing up. So it was very exciting for me to go to this campground. Well, one day, oh my God, 45 years later, maybe, I was here in this part of North Carolina visiting my daughter. And she said, let's go for a walk, get some fresh air and exercise. We walked down this road right here. And at the end of the road was that campground, the campground where I had gone as a child. And when I saw it, something in my heart leapt. I was like, oh my God, I love this area. I love being on the water. I want a place here. I want a vacation home here. I want to be able to come here and stay here. But I didn't know how I could afford to do that. You know, I didn't even have an income. My husband was working, and it just didn't seem feasible for me. This happened about 3 years ago. So, next thing that happened, I started to upgrade my mindset. I started to open my mind to the possibilities that could be there for me. The idea that we don't have to earn things in order to have things, that God wants the best for us, that God wants us to be happy and wants to fulfill the desires of our heart. And those desires are different for every single person. But for me, I got real clarity that my desire was to have a place in this area. And through a series of events, I figured out just how to do that. So I'm on vacation now. I'm going to show you my little cottage that I bought last December. It's in the background here, across the street. And there it is. A little bungalow that was built in the 1940s, and some people bought it and completely refurbished it and remodeled the inside so that it's gorgeous, everything brand new, everything modern on the inside. And here's the creme de la creme. Right across the street from my bungalow, I have my own private dock where I can go fish or crab or swim or boat or paddleboard or kayak or whatever. And I've been renting this place out. I listed it on Airbnb, I listed it on VRBO, I listed it on Booking.com, and it has been rented all summer long. So what that means is I've had enough income coming in to completely cover my mortgage, and it hasn't cost me anything. So my point being here is that when you have real clarity on what it is that you want out of life, and you don't waver back and forth, maybe I want this, maybe I want that, this is what I really want, but this is what I'm told I should have. When you let go of that duality and that hesitation and that doubt and that wavering, and you get laser focused on what it is you want out of life, and then you are open to new ideas, to inspirations, to impulses, to see how that thing might show up for you with complete confidence and complete faith, without doubts, without questioning, without needing to know when it's going to happen or how it's going to happen for you, miracles are possible. So I just want to encourage you and inspire you to not be attached. Don't get attached to something to the point where your whole happiness in life depends upon it. But stay open to feel for what it is that lights you up. What are the things that bring you joy in life? Where are the places where you feel uplifted and inspired? And do more of that. The world needs people who feel happy and who feel inspired, because when one of us raises our vibration, we uplift everybody. A rising tide lifts all boats. Staying in suffering, staying in misery, sacrificing and doing without doesn't serve anybody. It creates an energy of low vibration and resentment. But doing the things that bring you joy, getting clear on what those things are, and following the rabbit trail. Rabbit trail's not a good word, that'll take you down a hole. Following the breadcrumb trail, the hints from the universe, the clues will lead you there. This manifestation happened so fast for me, it was crazy. I had put a picture of a cottage on this very street onto my vision board about 1.5 years ago, maybe 2 years ago, when I came to this area and went on that walk with my daughter. And I honestly did not think that it was a possibility for me. I honestly did not think it was going to happen. In fact, the picture that I put on my vision board was another cottage on this street that had come on the market for sale, and somebody bought it immediately. So it was kind of crazy that it was even on my vision board, because it wasn't even available for sale. And that cottage was also built in the 1940s, but it was very run down, older inside. So I actually ended up with something far better than what I had dreamed of in the end. I had that picture on my vision board, and I just saw it. It was in my subconscious. It's not like I focused on it every day. It's not like I sat in front of it and said, make this happen, I need to figure out a way. No, that's not how these things work. I got clear on what I wanted. I wanted to be on this street. I wanted to be here on the water. And I had an inspired idea one morning. I woke up and thought, I'm just going to log on to the real estate websites and see if there's anything for sale on this street. And lo and behold, my cottage had just been listed 8 hours before. In the past, I would have looked at the listing and I would have said, I don't think I can afford it. I don't know if I should make an offer on it. And I would have waffled. This time, I did not. I knew I wanted it. Excuse me. I had met a real estate agent in this area the year before. I contacted her. I asked her to go look at the place for me because I was in Pennsylvania. I wasn't even here in North Carolina. She went over, did a walkthrough. I told her I wanted to make a full price offer because I knew the real estate market was hot. I knew it was going to get snapped up quickly, and I knew it was meant for me. She made the offer and we closed within 30 days, and the place is mine. So I'll give you one more view. This is the Currituck Sound. It is a mixture of salt water and fresh water between the barrier islands of North Carolina, the Outer Banks, and the mainland. And I have an incredible sunrise here like you would not believe, that floods my living room and my bedroom in the morning. It comes right through that big double pane window. A ½ acre yard, and everything has worked out so miraculously from there. I have a friend who lives on this street who was looking for work. She doesn't drive. I hired her to be my housekeeper. She comes over after every rental and cleans the place for me. I can trust her. I pay her. It's a win-win. I have somebody responsible taking care of my place. She makes cash. Her husband is a handyman. He comes over and repairs things and takes care of things for me. When I need that kind of work done, and I pay him, another win-win. I have a person I can trust here, and he gets cash. They have somebody that mows their lawn for them. They recommended him to me. He comes every Wednesday and mows the lawn and weed whacks. I send the cash. It's a win-win. So, life is not about struggling and sacrificing. It's not about making do. It's not about going without. It's not about struggle. It's about a grand adventure that we are all on. We are all manifestations of God here, and we are all meant to live life to the fullest. That's my message for today. Leave me a comment and let me know what it is that you dream about. What is your heart's desire? What would make you feel like you had moved into an alternate universe or shifted to another timeline? Because that's kind of how it feels for me here. And let me know if you have any questions. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Teresa McGallagher, and I love you. Have a great week.